This is a global crisis. These increases in prices are being felt across the globe. They're not something we can turn off or on, and not something we're entirely responsible for. It's the events of the world that have caused them. But actually, what did we see yesterday? The biggest cut in personal tax for a quarter of a century. Sizable change to try and get in there. But you know what? Actually, when you look at the circumstances that we find ourselves in as we enter this cost of living crisis, we've just been through a pandemic where we saw the government spend £410 billion supporting people, keeping the economy ticking, employing, paying the wages of 13.5 million people. And that's why we've emerged the other side, because of those tough decisions that we've made, because of the support that the government's put in place. We've emerged with more people on payroll than we had beforehand. We've emerged as one of the fastest growing economies in the G7. We're now going to have to do everything we can to support people in these very challenging circumstances that we find ourselves.
Yeah, well, you say that, but that's not what's happening here. Let's be honest about this. Britain is the only member of the G7, the major global economies in this world, who, in the midst of an inflation crisis, are increasing people's taxes. You talk about that tax cut yesterday. That's like me saying to you, give me a quid. Oh, and actually, sorry, I'll give you 15p off. I'm still increasing your taxes. Most average people in this country are going to be hundreds of pounds worse off. Forget about inflation, forget about rising energy prices. They're going to be worse off this year because of tax increases that are going ahead. No other country in the G7 is doing that. We're hammering people twice, aren't we, with increased inflation and tax rises.
No, national insurance contributions. We've seen the increase, the put forward, the levy that's going in. Actually, 70% of workers will now not be subject to that, because what we did yesterday in increasing that threshold means that 70% of 30 million people are actually getting a tax cut, 330 quid in the pockets of those who need it most. We're seeing the rebate on energy, that's going in there. We're also seeing that home support fund that's going to local authorities, because local authorities know those people who need it most and are most vulnerable in their area. This is the biggest cut in personal tax for a quarter of a century. However it gets wrapped up.
Matt, hold on. Sorry, Matt, there's a bit of a delay. I'm not going to let you get away with that. This is a tax cut to a tax that was introduced only last year and actually hasn't come into play yet. It's coming into play next April. It is not, in the space of a year, or what's going to happen, it is not a tax cut. People are going to pay more taxes from next month. It's a tax cut to a tax that's been announced that's going to come into play next month.
So we find ourselves in a situation, we've got to the end of the pandemic, we ended all elected surgery during that time. So we have this massive backlog in our NHS. 6 million people on waiting lists, waiting for an operation. I've been in my local hospital, I've seen the decisions that our doctors are having to make, whether to treat the old lady who needs a new hip replacement, who's been waiting for a very long time, whether to help the youngster who got injured by a car at the weekend. Making those decisions, well, actually, the funding from that national insurance increase is going to pay for just that. And it's also going to pay for that social care issue that's been going on. Governments have kicked the can down the line for years and years on adult social care. This money is going to be spent solving that. But actually, that change that we put in means those who need money most, those who are in the toughest of circumstances and have lower incomes, 70% of people, 30 million people, are actually getting a tax cut, £330 in their pocket.